The guards didn't stop her, and to this day, nobody can fully explain why. These were two grown men, trained, armed, stationed outside the most protected building on Cal Morna, a building that lawyers, police captains, and rival criminals had all been turned away from. But when a 7-year-old girl in a yellow dress walked up to that door holding a small brown paper parcel, they looked at each other, looked at her, and stepped aside. Maybe it was the braids. Maybe it was the way she walked, not nervous, not rushing, just steady, like she had somewhere important to be and fully intended to get there. Maybe, and I think this is closer to the truth, maybe even men like that recognize something in a child moving with purpose towards something that frightens her. They recognize courage. And courage, even in the smallest package, is hard to block. Inside that building sat a man who had not shown emotion in public for 30 years. Not at funerals, not at trials, not when rivals made moves against him or when deals collapsed or when the kind of things happened that make ordinary men break down completely. He had built a wall inside himself so solid, so long maintained, that most people who knew him had stopped believing there was anything behind it. He was the most feared man in the neighborhood. He was about to meet the one person who could walk right through that wall without even trying. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She wasn't brave in the way we usually use that word, loud, defiant, dramatic. She was brave the way her mother had taught her to be brave. Quietly, completely, with both hands open. And in one 5-minute conversation, she reminded the most dangerous man in the city who he was supposed to be. Stay with me, because this story will stay with you. Her name was Rosa Valentina Espinoza. 7 years old, 4 months, 1 week. She knew her exact age the same way she knew everything that mattered, precisely, completely, without rounding up or looking away. Her mother's name was Luciana. 31 years old, dark hair, quiet laugh. The kind of woman who made everyone around her feel like things were going to be okay, not by pretending problems didn't exist, but by refusing to let problems have the final word. 22 days ago, Luciana had collapsed at the garment factory where she'd worked for 9 straight years. 9 years of early mornings, long shifts, and the particular exhaustion of skilled work that the world consistently underpays. She was the one her co-workers called when a machine was being stubborn or a pattern didn't make sense. She was good at her job in the way that quiet people are good at things, steadily, without fanfare, without expecting applause. She had never missed a single day. Until day 10,000, when her body decided it had said enough. The factory held her position for 2 weeks. Then a letter came. Rosa read it. She was 7 years old, and she read the letter completely, every sentence, every careful corporate phrase designed to soften what it was actually saying. She folded it, put it back in the envelope, set it on the kitchen counter. Then she walked to her mother's bedroom and checked the medication on the nightstand. She counted the pills in the most important bottle. 4 pills, 1 per day. 4 days until they ran out. Now let me paint you a picture of what Rosa's life looked like in those 22 days. She was getting herself up every morning, making breakfast for 2, making sure her mother ate, getting herself to school, coming home, making dinner, doing her homework at the kitchen table, checking the medication before she went to sleep. Every day, without complaint, without anyone asking her to. Because her mother had raised her in the way that certain extraordinary mothers raise their children, not by telling them what to do in hard times, but by showing them, every single day, what it looks like to keep going. Rosa had been watching her mother keep going her whole life. Now it was her turn. The church had helped once. The neighbors on their floor had collected what they could. Her aunt in the north had sent money twice, but she had 4 children of her own and a husband who hadn't worked in 6 months, and Rosa understood without being told that the well was dry. She had thought through every option. She had eliminated them one by one. And then she had arrived, methodically, inevitably, at the one option that remained. The one that everyone in the neighborhood knew about and nobody used unless they had absolutely no other choice. The building on the corner. The man at the corner table. Don Augusto. Her neighbor's son Tomás, 12, self-appointed expert on risk assessment, found out about the plan and came downstairs specifically to talk her out of it. "You're going to walk in there and cry," he told her. "You're going to embarrass yourself and your mother, and nothing is going to happen." Rosa looked at him calmly. "Then I'll cry," she said, "and I'll ask anyway." Tomás had no response to that. Rosa went back inside to finish what she'd been working on for 3 nights. "I need to tell you about the bracelet. Because the bracelet is not a small detail in this story. The bracelet is the whole story." 3 nights before Tuesday, Rosa had made a decision. She had no money, she had no leverage, she had nothing that the most powerful man in the neighborhood could possibly need or want. But she had her grandmother's old green scarf. It had been sitting on the shelf in the bedroom for 2 years, already fraying at one end, already giving itself back to the threads it was made from. Rosa had looked at it for a long time. Then she took it down and began to unravel it from the loose end. Carefully, thread by thread, rolling it into a small ball as she went. She was going to make something. Now Rosa had never made a bracelet before. She had watched her mother sew her whole life. She knew what patient hands looked like. She knew what it meant to work at something that didn't cooperate. But knowing what something looks like and doing it yourself are 2 entirely different things. The first attempt collapsed after 20 minutes. She pulled it apart and started again. The second attempt made it halfway before the tension went wrong and the whole thing started twisting on itself. She pulled it apart and started again. The third attempt she kept. Even though one section had pulled too tight and left a pucker she couldn't fix without ruining everything else. Even though there was a small knot where she'd run out of thread and had to join a second piece. Even though it was imperfect in ways that were obvious to anyone who looked closely. She kept it because she had kept going, and the keeping going was the point. She wrapped it in a square of brown paper. Folded each corner precisely. Wound a piece of red thread around it 3 times and tied it in a bow. Set it on the kitchen table and looked at it for a long moment. It was small, it was imperfect. It had cost her nothing except 3 nights of effort and a scarf that was already coming apart. But here is what Rosa understood at 7 years old that most adults have forgotten. When you make something with your own hands and give it to someone, you are not giving them an object. You are giving them time, you are giving them effort, you are giving them the proof that you thought about them before you even knew if they would help you. That kind of gift cannot be bought. And it cannot be ignored. On Tuesday morning, she tucked it under her arm. She checked on her mother, sleeping, breathing steadily, the medication on the nightstand. She wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter, gone to handle something, back before lunch. Love, Rosa. And she walked out into the October morning. 4 blocks, steady pace, both hands visible. Toward the building that grown men crossed the street to avoid. Let me tell you who this man was. Not the rumors, not the reputation, the actual person. Augusto Celestino Vela, 53 years old, born 4 blocks from the building he now ran. He had watched this neighborhood change across half a century, watched businesses open and close, watched families arrive and leave, watched the city expand around it without ever quite including it. He had never left. He had, by the time Rosa walked through his door, spent his entire adult life becoming the kind of person that a place like Cal Morna produces when it needs someone to keep things from completely falling apart, and is willing to accept that the person who does that job will not be doing it cleanly. He controlled things, he settled disputes, he filled the gaps that official structures had long since stopped filling. He had done things he was not proud of. He had also, quietly and without announcement, done things that nobody ever knew about, kept a family in their home when the landlord wanted them out, made sure an old woman on the third floor of the yellow building always had her groceries, ensured that a certain teacher at the school who was too good at his job to leave and too poor to stay was never quite poor enough to go. He was not a good man in the simple, uncomplicated sense. He was a complicated man who still had something good in him. He had just stopped listening to it. Until Tuesday. Every Tuesday from 10 until noon, he sat at the corner table and saw whoever came. It was a practice inherited from his predecessor and kept for 21 years without exception. Rain, illness, 2 separate occasions when the building itself had been compromised, and he had conducted Tuesday from a different location rather than cancel it. He kept it because his mother had told him once that the moment a powerful man stops being reachable by ordinary people is the moment he stops being powerful and starts being simply dangerous. There is a difference. His mother had been a seamstress. She had worked with her hands her whole life. She had told him this in the kitchen of the apartment 4 blocks away where he had grown up, over a meal she had cooked after a 12-hour shift, with the specific moral authority of someone who has earned the right to say hard things. He had listened. He had kept the Tuesday practice for 21 years. He had also, somewhere along the way, stopped remembering why. By 11:15 on this particular Tuesday, he had seen 7 people. A shopkeeper with a supplier problem, a debt dispute between 2 brothers, a woman needing more time on a loan, he gave it, no additional interest, which he didn't announce, a young man looking for a certain kind of work, which he declined without explanation, a building owner with a tenant question, an elderly domino regular who asked for nothing. He was on his second coffee when Marco appeared. Marco was 22, still assembling the right face for this kind of work, still at the stage where he tried to look like nothing surprised him. He did not look like nothing surprised him right now. He looked like he had just seen something that didn't fit any category he had available. "There's a girl outside," Marco said. "How old?" "Maybe 6, maybe 7. She has a parcel. She says she has an appointment." Augusto looked up from his newspaper. "I don't have an appointment with a child, Marco." "I know, I told her," she said, "and I'm giving you her exact words," she said. "Please tell him that Luciana Espinosa's daughter is here. It is urgent. She will not take long, and she will wait as long as necessary." Don Augusto was still. Luciana Espinosa. He turned the name over. He knew it. Not personally, he had never met the woman. But in a neighborhood where he had lived for 53 years, names accumulated the way everything accumulates in a place you never leave. He knew she worked at the garment factory. He had heard, through the reliable, invisible current of neighborhood information, that she was ill. He set down his newspaper. He looked at Marco for a moment. "Bring her in," he said. Rosa had been on the bench by the window for 13 minutes. She knew because she'd been watching the clock behind the bar since she sat down, round face, cracked corner, perfectly accurate. Back straight, feet not quite reaching the floor, parcel in both hands, red bow up. She had been careful not to crush it. The room had noticed her, the way rooms notice things that don't belong. A few glances, some murmuring, then that practiced, deliberate looking away that people in rooms like that have perfected, the art of deciding something is not your business and committing to that decision visibly. One older man at the nearest table hadn't quite managed it. He kept looking back at her, not threatening, not curious exactly, more like recognition, like she reminded him of someone he used to know. Rosa didn't mind. She was used to being looked at. She was a child who had been navigating adult spaces since she was 5, doctors' waiting rooms, government offices, the kind of places where children are technically allowed but practically invisible. She had learned how to exist in those spaces without drawing the wrong kind of attention. She sat still, she waited, she watched the clock. She was not afraid. She had decided not to be afraid. Fear was allowed to be present. It was not allowed to be in charge. When Marco came over and said she could go in, she stood immediately. Smoothed her dress, both hands, front and back, the way her mother had shown her. Tucked the parcel carefully under one arm. And walked across the room. Now I want you to imagine this scene. A social club in the middle of the morning. Men at tables, ceiling fans turning. The low noise of dominoes and conversation that falls away as a 7-year-old girl in a yellow dress walks through the room toward the corner table. Every single person in that room watching. Some of them thinking, what is happening? Some of them thinking, someone should stop this. None of them moving. Because there was something about the way she walked that made stopping her feel wrong, like interrupting something. She stopped at the right distance from the table. Not too close, not too far, the distance of someone who has thought about this moment and prepared for it. She looked at Don Augusto. He was wearing his reading glasses, the ones he kept folded in his pocket and refused to wear where people could see them. He had apparently forgotten he had them on. He looked at her. And before he could say a single word. "Good morning," she said. "My name is Rosa Espinosa. Thank you for seeing me." 21 years of Tuesday mornings. Hundreds of people across that table. Not one of them had ever started with a thank you. He said, "Sit down, Rosa." She climbed into the chair. It was too high for her. She had to push herself up with both hands, arms straight, chin up. She did it without a flicker of embarrassment. Then she placed the brown paper parcel on the table. Both hands, gently. "The way you set down something you've been protecting." She looked at him directly. "My mother is sick," she said. "Her medicine runs out in 4 days. I don't have money to buy more. I came to ask if you would help." Pause. "I want to be honest with you," she continued, "because I think honesty matters when you're asking someone for something. I have nothing to offer you, except this." She put her hand on the parcel. "I made it myself. It took me 3 nights. It's not perfect. One part pulled wrong and I couldn't fix it without ruining the rest. But I made it for you, before I came, before I even knew if you would agree to see me." She slid it across the table toward him. "Because I thought," she said, "that if I show up with something I made with my own hands, something that cost me time and effort even though I had nothing to gain yet, maybe that shows I'm serious. Maybe that counts for something." The room was silent. Felipe at the bar had put down whatever he was holding. Marco at the door had turned all the way around. The old man at the nearest table had stopped pretending to look elsewhere. Everyone was watching Don Augusto, waiting to see what the most feared man in the neighborhood would do with a small brown parcel pushed across his table by a child. He reached out and picked it up. He turned it over in his hands. Slowly, carefully. These were not soft hands. These were the hands of 53 hard years, broad, scarred in small ways, the kind of hands that a life like his produces. But right now they were careful with this small paper-wrapped thing in a way that nobody in that room had ever seen him be careful before. He pulled the red thread loose, unfolded each corner of the brown paper. A bracelet, small, woven from green thread, uneven in places. You could see where the weave had tightened too much and left a pucker, and where it had loosened and been compensated for. There was a small knot roughly in the middle where the thread had run out, and a second piece had been joined. The color was not perfectly consistent, because the thread had come from a scarf that had spent years fatting. It was imperfect, in every technical sense. And it was the most honest thing anyone had ever put on that table. He turned it over in his fingers, slowly. You could read the whole history of its making in it, every place she had struggled, every decision she had made, every moment she had kept going when the easier thing would have been to stop. "You made this," he said. "Yes." "From what?" "My grandmother's scarf. It was already unraveling at the end. I just kept going with what it was already doing." He set it on the table between them. Looked at it. "Why green?" he said. She thought about it for a moment. And then she said something that landed in that room like a stone dropped in still water. "My mother says green is the color of things that keep growing even when the conditions aren't good," Rosa said. "Plants that grow through concrete, moss on a wall, things that shouldn't survive but do." I thought that was the right color for what I was trying to say. Silence. Real silence, the kind that has weight. Don Augusto looked at the bracelet, then at the girl. Then he asked the question that changed everything. "Tell me about your mother," he said. "This is the moment. I need you to be right here with me." Because what this child said next, in this room, at this table, to this man, is one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking things I have ever had the privilege of putting into words. Rosa was quiet for a second. She wasn't searching for the answer, she knew the answer. She was choosing how to carry it into the open. "She is the kind of person," Rosa said, "who always saves the last good thing for someone else." Don Augusto didn't move. "When there's one piece of fruit left, she says she's not hungry. When there's only enough hot water for one bath, she says she already had hers at the factory. When I have a bad dream and I wake up crying, she stays up the whole rest of the night. I can hear her through the wall, moving quietly, making sure I'm okay, but in the morning she never tells me she was awake. She just makes breakfast and asks what I want to do that day." Pause. "One time," Rosa continued, "we couldn't afford both the medicine and the electricity at the same time." She said it plainly, the way you say facts. She chose the medicine. We had no lights for 4 days, and do you know what she did? Don Augusto shook his head, barely, but he shook it. "She made a tent out of the bed sheets," Rosa said. "She lined candles along the windowsill. She made hot chocolate on the gas stove, and we sat inside the tent, and she told me stories until I fell asleep. She called it a camping adventure inside the apartment. She sang. She actually sang." Rosa looked at her hands for a moment. "I knew what was really happening," she said quietly. "I wasn't fooled. I knew the lights were off because there wasn't enough money and that was a serious, scary thing." She looked back up. "But she did it anyway. The tent, the candles, the stories, the singing, because she understood something that I've been trying to figure out my whole life. That even when you can't fix a hard thing, even when the hard thing is just going to be hard and there's no getting around it, the way you hold it with someone still matters. The way you decide to face it together still matters. You can't always change what's happening, but you can change what it feels like to go through it." A long pause. "She makes impossible things survivable," Rosa said. "I've been watching her do it my whole life. She doesn't even know she does it. She just loves us that way, like the hard thing is not allowed to be the whole story, like there is always, always something worth singing about, even in the dark." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I think that's why I'm here," she said. "She taught me not in words, just by being who she is, that when something is impossible, you don't wait for it to stop being impossible. You find the one true thing you can do, and you do it, even if it's small, even if you're not sure it'll work, even if you're scared." She looked at him steadily. "Even if you're scared," she said again, "you do it anyway, because the people you love are worth being scared for." The silence after she finished was different from the silence before. It had a different quality, a different weight. It was the silence of a room that has just received something it didn't know it needed. Don Augusto Vela did not move for a long time. This man who had sat at this table through crisis and confrontation and grief and pressure that would have destroyed most people sat completely still. And then he pressed the back of his hand to his mouth. One time. Just one time. But everyone saw it. Marco by the door saw it. Felipe at the bar saw it. The old man at the nearest table who had been pretending to look elsewhere, he saw it. Every single person in that room saw the most feared man in the neighborhood sit across from a 7-year-old girl and feel something. 30 years. 30 years of that wall. 5 minutes and it was gone. He straightened. He took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was different, not weak, not broken, just different, quieter, like something had been removed from it. That extra weight that powerful men carry in their voices, the weight that says I am what I am and I have been what I have been, it was gone. What was left sounded like a person talking to another person. And honestly, that was more powerful than anything that had come before it. Rosa, he said. Yes, I'm going to help your mother. She nodded once, calm, like she had come expecting this answer and was simply receiving it. Thank you, she said. Not just the medicine, he said, not 4 days, for as long as she needs it, months, a year, however long, and I'm sending someone to speak with a doctor I trust, a specialist, not a clinic. He will see your mother this week. Whatever she needs to recover properly, she will have it. Rosa went very still. That's more than I asked for, she said. Yes, I only came for help with the medicine. I heard exactly what you asked, he said. I'm giving what is needed. Those are two different things sometimes. She looked at him carefully. No conditions, she said. No terms I need to know about. No conditions, no terms, you owe nothing. Not now, not in 10 years, not ever. Then what is this, she asked. What do you call it? He picked up the bracelet from the table. He held it, he looked at it, the uneven weave, the tight section, the joining knot, the whole imperfect history of 3 nights of a child refusing to give up. He looked at her. A reminder, he said, that I needed more than you know. Then he did something that made every person in that room hold their breath. He wound the bracelet around his wrist. Right there at the corner table, in front of everyone. The green thread, the uneven weave, the little bow, against the wrist of the most feared man in the neighborhood. It was slightly too small. It sat snugly on his thick wrist, the bow against his pulse. He looked at it for a moment. Then he rolled his cuff down over it. He looked up. And the room, this room full of hard men who had seen a lot of things, was completely silent. Nobody said a word. Because there was nothing to say. Something had just happened in that room that didn't need commentary. He called Felipe over. Spoke to him quietly, 4 sentences, that's all it took. Felipe left through the back immediately. Then Don Augusto turned back to Rosa. I need your address, he said. Tell me about the building, your floor, how to find your apartment. She told him. Building number, color of the door, blue, faded, with a brass number that had lost one of its screws and sat slightly crooked. 4th floor. The apartment with the small clay pot of basil on the window ledge because her mother said having something green and alive nearby was important. He absorbed every detail without writing anything down. He noted the basil. He didn't say anything about it. He filed it. Felipe will come this afternoon with the medication, he said. What do you tell your mother? Rosa thought about it. I'll tell her the pharmacy delivered it, she said. That's simple, and it doesn't start questions she doesn't have the energy for right now. Good, he said. Is that what you wanted me to say? She asked. It's what makes sense, he said. Okay, she said, and then, but I want you to know that I don't usually avoid the truth. I'm making an exception because she needs to rest, not because I'm comfortable with it. He looked at her for a moment. Noted, he said. Before she left, he asked one more question. While your mother is sick, who is looking after you? The expression she made was one he recognized. He had made it himself many times when someone asked a question whose honest answer was not the one he wanted to give. I am, she said. I know how to cook. I know where the important papers are. I know who to call if something gets worse. You're 7. 4 months and 1 week, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes, something that was not quite grief and not quite admiration, but lived in the territory between them. Go home, Rosa, he said quietly. She climbed down from the chair, smoothed her dress, and then she paused. She looked at his wrist, the closed cuff, the hidden bracelet underneath. He saw her look. Their eyes met for a moment. No words. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. Thank you, he said, for coming. She walked back across the social club, past the domino tables, past Marco at the door, who stepped aside without being asked, the same way he had when she arrived, as if something about her commanded a kind of respect he couldn't fully explain. She walked out into the October morning, and the door closed behind her. Don Augusto sat at his corner table for a long time. His coffee was cold, he didn't touch it. His newspaper was open to a page he hadn't read, he didn't look at it. He just sat with his hand resting on the table, cuffed down, the slight pressure of the bracelet against his pulse, like a finger tapping gently. Remember, remember, remember. Felipe arrived at the building on Cal Morna at 3:45 that afternoon. He was a practical man, efficient, not given to sentiment. He had worked for Don Augusto for 11 years and considered himself fluent in the full range of what that job required. But standing outside the blue door with the crooked brass number, holding a bag with 3 bottles of medication and a folded note with Dr. Herrera's appointment details, he felt something he couldn't immediately categorize. He knocked. Rosa opened the door. She looked at the bag, then at him. You're Felipe, she said, not a question. Yes, he said. She took the bag carefully. She looked inside it, counted the bottles, checked the labels, confirmed the appointment card. Everything she had described to Augusto, everything accounted for. Thank you, she said. Felipe nodded. He was about to turn and leave when something made him pause. Through the open door he could see a small apartment, clean, spare, carefully arranged, and on the kitchen windowsill a small clay pot with a basil plant in it, bright green, healthy, turned toward the light. He stood there for a second longer than he needed to. Is there anything else you need? He said. He wasn't sure why he said it. It wasn't part of what he'd been asked to do. Rosa thought about it seriously. We're okay, she said. We have what we need now. He nodded. He left. On the walk back, he thought about what it meant that a 7-year-old girl had walked into the most intimidating building in the neighborhood, sat across from the most intimidating man in the neighborhood, and come out with everything she needed. He thought about the bracelet he had watched his boss put on at the corner table. He thought about a lot of things on that walk. He was a different man by the time he got back. Slightly quietly, but different. That's how it works sometimes. One person's courage reaches further than they'll ever know. Dr. Herrera arrived at 9:15 on Thursday. Tall man, silver-rimmed glasses, 60s, he moved through rooms the way experienced doctors do, quietly, without adding to the weight that's already there. Rosa opened the door. She had cleaned the entire apartment the evening before. She hadn't known the doctor was coming. Felipe had mentioned it briefly on Tuesday afternoon. That was all she needed. By 8 o'clock Wednesday night the floor was swept, the dishes done, the chairs straightened, fresh water in the glass by the bed, the basil plant moved to, where the morning light hit it first. She had also, very carefully, pressed her yellow dress. The doctor spent 40 minutes in the bedroom with Luciana. Rosa sat at the kitchen table, with both hands flat on the surface, and waited. She had become excellent at waiting. Not passive waiting, not the waiting of someone with no options. The active, deliberate waiting of someone who has done everything in her power and is now allowing the next thing to happen. When Dr. Herrera came out, he sat down across from her without being asked. "Your mother is going to be all right," he said. Rosa breathed. 2 months, maybe 3, the medication every single day without missing, that's critical. Rest, food, proper food, not just enough to get through. Can you make sure of all that? "Yes," she said. "I need to be sure you understand how important the medication schedule is." "I understand," she said. "I'll set an alarm, I'll track it on a chart, I won't miss a day." He looked at her for a long moment. "How old are you?" he said. 7, almost 8. He shook his head slowly. "Your mother," he said, "is a very lucky woman." And Rosa, this 7-year-old, who had been doing the work of 3 people for 22 days, looked at him calmly and said, "Not lucky, she earned it. She has been a good person and a hard worker her whole life. Good things should come to people like that. They just sometimes need a little help arriving on time." At the door, he paused. "Who arranged all of this?" he asked quietly. "The medication, my visit." Rosa met his eyes. "It was handled," she said. He studied her face for one more moment, then he nodded. "No charge," he said. "Tell your mother to call my office if anything changes, day or night." He left. Rosa closed the door, stood in the hallway, pressed her back against the door, and closed her eyes. 2 months, maybe 3. The medication every day. Her mother was going to be all right. She stood there for about 30 seconds. Then she opened her eyes, pushed off the door, and went to start lunch. Because her mother would be waking up soon, and she needed to eat. Here is what I want you to understand about Don Augusto in the weeks that followed. Nothing about his life changed dramatically. He was still who he was. He still ran what he ran. He still sat at the corner table on Tuesday mornings. But something had shifted in the way he moved through all of it. The building 2 streets over had broken heating for 3 winters. He had known. He had filed it in the category of things that were not his problem. 3 days after Rosa's visit, he called the building owner and had it fixed. He paid for it himself. He told no one. The school on Calmena had been fundraising for years to repair a leaking roof, the same leaks, the same buckets in the hallway every rainy season. He sent enough money to fix it completely, anonymously. When Felipe asked what name to use, he said, "No name, just fix the roof." An elderly woman on the 3rd floor of the yellow building near the market had been getting irregular grocery deliveries. Sometimes her family came, sometimes they didn't. He quietly arranged for someone to check in on her every week, not dramatically, not announced, just someone checking in. He found, sitting at his corner table on Tuesday mornings, that he was looking at the faces of the people who came differently than he had before. Not at their problems, he had always handled the problems efficiently. At the people. The specific tiredness of a woman who has been managing alone for too long. The careful, rehearsed dignity of someone who practiced what they were going to say on the walk over. The way people hold themselves when they're about to ask for something and don't know how it's going to go. He had been seeing all of this for 21 years without truly seeing it. He was seeing it now. And every day, under his cuff, the bracelet. The small green woven thing with the uneven weave and the puckered section and the joining knot. He wore it every single day. Some mornings, before rolling his cuff down, he would look at it for a moment, at every place she had struggled, at every place she had kept going. He thought about what it had cost her to make it. Nothing and everything. 3 nights of effort, an old scarf, the act of making something for someone before you even know if they'll help you. The faith built into the making. He wore that faith on his wrist every day, and it was heavier than anything else he'd ever carried. He received updates from Felipe about Luciana's progress. Week 2, sitting up, eating properly, asking about Rosa's schoolwork. Week 4, walking to the window, standing in the kitchen to make tea. Week 6, Senora Cortez had brought her sewing small work just to keep her hands busy. She had finished 2 pieces in one evening. Week 8, she had gone downstairs for the first time. At each update, Don Augusto nodded and went on with his morning. But he touched the bracelet through his sleeve. Every time. Without knowing, he was doing it. Rosa turned 8 years old in February. Her mother made arroz con leche. Standing at the stove, on her own feet, stirring with the wooden spoon, the one with the small crack in the handle that Rosa had caused years ago, reaching for something on a high shelf, and which her mother had never replaced because she said the crack gave it character. The kitchen smelled of warm milk and cinnamon and something else, something harder to name, the specific ordinary smell of a life returning to itself. Rosa stood in the doorway. She had been doing this more often lately, stopping in doorways when she found her mother doing something normal, standing still for a moment, storing it. Her mother's hands moving, her back getting straighter week by week, the tuneless little hum she made when something needed concentration. Rosa stored it all. The way she stored everything that mattered. "You're staring at me again," her mother said without turning. "I'm memorizing you," Rosa said. Luciana turned from the stove. She was still thinner than she'd been, still slower than before, but she was there, she was standing, she was stirring arroz con leche for her daughter's birthday. "What are you memorizing?" she said. "This," Rosa said. "You here, making something, moving around like everything's okay. I want to keep a picture of it so that when things get hard again, I can take it out and look at it." Luciana set down the spoon. She crossed the kitchen slowly and knelt down carefully, the careful movement of someone still in the process of trusting her body again, and put her arms around her daughter. Rosa held on tight. For a long time. The kind of hug that is not just a hug, the kind that is a whole conversation, a whole reckoning, a whole season of fear and work and hope compressed into the simple act of holding on. The arroz con leche bubbled on the stove. The basil plant on the windowsill caught the February light and held it. And across the neighborhood, at the corner table of the social club on Cal Morna, a man in a good jacket reached under his cuff without thinking about it, touched the bracelet, and thought about camping trips in the dark, and a girl who had decided that being scared was not a reason to stop, and felt, for the first time in a very long time, like the person he had originally intended to become. Years passed. Rosa grew up. She was serious in the way that children formed by necessity are serious, with a precision and a steadiness that most people spend their whole adult lives trying to develop, and some never quite reach. She finished school at the top of her class, earned a full scholarship to a university in the capital, no assistance, no connections, pure merit. She studied law. When people asked her why, she always said the same thing: the most important negotiations in the world happen between people with unequal power. Someone should understand both sides of that from the inside. Someone should know how the system works well enough to make it work for the people it was designed to ignore. On the morning her acceptance letter arrived, she walked to the social club on Cal Morna. Don Augusto was at his corner table. Older, considerably grayer, the reading glasses were on his face openly now, no more hiding them in his pocket. He had made his peace with needing them. She sat down across from him and put the letter on the table. He read it. "Your mother," he said. "She runs a sewing cooperative, 6 women from the building, her idea, she does the accounts herself now. He smiled, a real smile, not the controlled, careful expression he usually wore at that table, but an actual smile reaching his eyes. It looked good on him. I told you I would come back, she said. You did. I've been thinking since I was 7 about what I owe you, she said, and my answer has always been the same. It's not money. You told me I owed nothing, and I believe you meant it. What then? He said. When I finish school, I'm coming back to this neighborhood. I'm going to spend the rest of my career making sure the people on Cal Morna and every street like it have someone who knows how the system works and is on their side inside it. So the next child who has a problem doesn't have to be brave in a room that frightens them. So there's a different door to knock on, one that should have existed a long time ago. Don Augusto was quiet for a long moment. That's what you owe me, he said. That's what I owe you, she said. She stood to leave. At the door she stopped, turned back. The bracelet, she said. He looked at her. Then he rolled back his cuff. All the way. There it was. On his wrist, after all the years. The green thread faded with time, the weave unchanged, the little pucker in the tight section exactly as she had left it, the joining knot exactly where she had tied it. She looked at it for a long moment. And then she looked at him. Good, she said. Just that one word. Good. She walked out into the morning. Don Augusto rolled his cuff back down. He sat at his corner table. His coffee was getting cold again. It was always getting cold. He had been letting it go cold at this table for 21 years. He picked it up anyway. He thought about a girl in a yellow dress who had walked into this room with nothing but honest words and something she had made with her own hands. He thought about how the most powerful thing that had ever happened at this table had cost nothing. How it had weighed nothing. How it had fit in the palm of his hand. And changed everything in him that still had the capacity to be changed. I want to leave you with something. We spend so much of our lives believing that to change a situation, to move something that seems completely immovable, we need the right leverage, the right resources, the right position. We need to be powerful enough, rich enough, connected enough, old enough. Rosa was 7 years old. She had no money, no leverage, no connections, nothing except a handmade bracelet and the truth. And she walked into the hardest room in her world and changed it. Not because she was fearless, she told him herself she was frightened. But she had learned from her mother that being frightened is not the same as being stopped. She had learned that showing up with what you have, even when what you have is small, even when what you have is imperfect, even when what you have is just something you made yourself because you had nothing else to give, showing up with that is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. Don Augusto didn't change because Rosa was clever. He didn't change because she argued well or negotiated hard or found the right pressure point. He changed because she looked at him, this man that the whole neighborhood was afraid of, and treated him like someone who still had goodness in him. Like someone who was still capable of being reached. Like someone worth being honest with. And he was. He had just been waiting, without knowing he was waiting, for someone brave enough to believe it. Luciana raised a daughter who could do that. In an apartment with no lights, inside a bedsheet tent, by the light of candles on the windowsill, with a song in the dark. She raised her. That is the real miracle in this story. Not what Rosa did, but what her mother built in her, quietly, consistently, in the hard, ordinary moments that no one was watching, that made it possible for her to do it. If this story moved you, share it with someone today. With a parent, with a child, with a friend who's in the middle of something hard and needs to be reminded that showing up with what you have is enough. Because somewhere right now, there is a Rosa, standing outside a door that frightens her, holding something small that she made herself, getting ready to knock. And she needs to know it's worth it.